eyeing the seat she booked beside a stranger. I used to think the most dangerous part of a lie was the moment it left your mouth. It turns out the real danger is the calendar invite it leaves behind. That's how I found it, our shared calendar, which I use for dentist appointments and to remember when to water the ficus, suddenly sporting an entry titled Laundry. The location field said, Train 712, Car 5, Seat 7A7B. The time block was 3 hours long. I don't put laundry on a train. Nina and I have been married 6 years. We built something durable without ever calling it that. I light stages for a living. She designs websites for people who think they're brands. Most evenings we meet somewhere between my rehearsal schedules and her client calls to eat too much bread and argue affectionately about fonts. We are honest in the way couples become honest when it's efficient. We don't hide receipts. We do hide worry. The night before the laundry, Nina fell asleep on my arm and somewhere around 2 in the morning murmured a name I'd never heard. Rafa, she said, barely touching the R like the word might bite back. At breakfast, she was the same woman who oversalts eggs and kisses me like an apology for the world's speed. Big day, I asked, pretending I hadn't noticed the calendar entry. Meetings, she said. She tied her hair up with a red ribbon I bought in Lisbon because it looked like mischief. I'll be late. I nodded and let the rhythm play out. There's an angle to every light. You learn to look from the side. At 11, I clicked the calendar event open like a trap that should have snapped earlier. Laundry still said train 712. I Googled train 712 and discovered it was the afternoon express to the seaside, the one with the observation car and the kind of marketing photos that make you believe travel can repair a marriage. Seat 7A7B meant she wasn't going alone. The note field had one word, window. I could have called. I could have said, who's Rafa and why is laundry on a train? Instead, I forwarded the event to my email and took the 12:15 local to the central station, where every romance and every betrayal passes through pretending to be logistics. I told myself I was there to watch, not to act, which is what cowards and lighting designers say when they haven't drawn a queue yet. Train 712 was gleaming and self-important at Platform 4. A few minutes before departure, Nina walked into the concourse wearing the blue dress I bought her for a wedding we'd left early to make out in a stairwell. She carried a tote that could pass for a work bag if you didn't look too closely at the absence of a laptop. She paused by the departure board and scanned the crowd with that careful, bright alertness she gets when she's about to lie and wants to do it beautifully. He arrived from the south entrance, the kind of man coastal towns produce to keep women hopeful, tall without apology, hair that behaved. He wore a gray shirt the exact temperature of steel rails. They didn't touch. They smiled with their mouths closed. He said something that made her glance down at the ribbon in her hair and then up at him like a dare. I stood behind a column and became architecture. They boarded. I waited 3 minutes and followed, choosing car 6, which is close enough to curiosity but far enough from cruelty. The train slid out of the city like a knife leaving a sheath, and the skyline softened into suburbs, then fields. At the coupling between cars, I could see into theirs. Nina had the window, as promised. He took the aisle. They talked with their faces angled toward the glass as if that made honesty aerodynamic. I've always believed intelligence is just attention with better clothes. I watched the reflection in the window rather than their bodies, safer and crueler. In the glass, Nina looked like a woman in a film about a woman deciding to ruin her life. He looked like a man who had learned to lean the right way. When she laughed, the ribbon moved like a flag. When he reached for the water bottle between them, his fingers didn't brush hers, and that restraint made me hate him more than 1,000 greedy touches would have. At the first stop, the conductor called tickets and I used the excuse to drift past their row. Up close, He smelled like good soap and plains. Nina glanced up at me. A lightning flash recognition, a swallow, a calculation. I kept walking. I sat in the vestibule on the little fold-down seat you only notice when you need to notice it. The door window framed a strip of sea so blue it would be embarrassing in a painting. My phone buzzed. A text from Nina. "If you're here, please sit with me. If you're not, please don't perform this alone." She knew me too well. I stood. My legs felt like something borrowed. I walked into car 5 and stopped at row 7 like a man arriving on a stage he didn't audition for. "Hi," I said. The man stood, half blocking, half inviting, the way polite people are trained to. "You must be Nina's husband," I said. I put my hand on the headrest like a claim and a surrender. "I'm the guy who does laundry at home." He stepped into the aisle to give me his seat. He was smarter than he looked. He understood the economy of gestures. "Rafa," he said, as though we were exchanging lapel pins. "We were just talking about the window." Nina's face didn't arrange itself into shame. It arranged itself into a truth I hadn't discovered yet. "Sit," she said, patting 7A, the window seat, as if this train had always only had one chair and she'd been keeping it warm. Rafa took 7B without a sulk. He tilted his body toward the aisle the way you do when you're prepared to leave if the narrative requires a sacrifice. I sat. The C kept doing the thing C's do, convincing you you're small and the math still works. "I found the calendar invite," I said to Nina, not to him, "and I heard you say his name in your sleep." She didn't flinch. "I put it there for you to find," she said. "I didn't know how to bring you to the truth without making the truth rotten." Rafa cleared his throat, gentle. "I can take a different car," he said, and when I didn't answer, he stood. "I'll be at the cafe, seat, whatever." He touched the headrest. A small, respectful goodbye and slid away. We breathed. The train curved along a cliff and the world tipped, obliging us to lean together. Her shoulder touched my arm. It felt like a treaty drafted by gravity. "Tell me," I said. "I met him at a client launch," she said. He looked at me like I was a choice, not a duty. I hated that I liked it. I tried not to text. I texted. We met twice, once for coffee and once for a walk where we pretended not to walk anywhere. It wasn't a secret that wanted to be bad. It was a door I forgot we could build inside the house. "Are you in love?" I asked, letting the question be both scalpel and balm. "I don't know what that word buys anymore," she said. "I'm in longing. I'm in relief. I still want you. I wanted to ask you to be bigger than me by coming with me to see if this was real or just the view." "You put laundry on the calendar," I said, "because I like symbols to keep their contracts." She smiled without joy. "Because it's the chore you do when you're trying to make a mess clean." The cafe cart clinked. The conductor announced the next bay like a secret only hundreds knew. I looked at Nina's hands. They were my favorite geometry, small knuckles, one nick from a box cutter, the ring we resized when Winter tried to borrow her fingers. I thought of all the times I'd chosen efficiency over attention. I thought of lighting notes in the margins of scripts where "soften here" meant let the audience believe they survived. I thought of swimming as a child, how the shore seemed to move while you stayed still because you didn't understand currents yet. "Why 7A7B?" I asked. "Because the map said the light is best there at this hour," she said. And it was absurd and true in the way so many terrible, beautiful things are. Rafa returned with 3 paper cups and a humility that annoyed me by being real. "I wasn't sure," he said, offering me one. "But my mother raised me to never assume who drinks what." I took the cup because refusing it would have made me a man I didn't recognize. We sat in a new geometry. Nina in the window, me beside her, Rafa across the aisle in the jump seat, the one you only use when the car is full or you're stubborn. The C opened like a throat. Why him? I asked. Not because I wanted to inventory his jawline or his laugh, but because numbing the shape of the problem gives you a chance to build a solution that fits. He knows the version of me that doesn't narrate, she said. You and I are good at commentary. I wanted to be the action for an hour. Rafa shifted, contrite and unhelpful. I don't want to be the reason something breaks that doesn't need to, he said. I like her enough to be the villain if that makes the math easier. Villains are lazy, I said. The hardest role is extra. You arrive, you occupy space, you leave a mood. He accepted the insult like a compliment because sometimes they are the same thing. Tell me what you want me to be, he said. Nina turned her face to mine. It was the same face I loved before I learned how many expressions it can make. I want us, she said, but I want a room in us that you don't patrol. I want to say I miss Sparks and not have you take it as a performance review. Then say it, I said, and felt my pride knock once and step aside. Say it before you text a stranger. Say it at breakfast when we're arguing about fonts and you can tell me your favorite part of your day is when you feel feral. She laughed, soft and surprised, and in that sound was the first thing that felt like home since Platform 4. She reached under the armrest and found my fingers. We laced like a trick we had invented. Her thumb pressed that small pulse point where reassurance lives. Rafa stood again. I'll get off at the next station, he said. There's a return in an hour. You can keep the C. You don't have to leave dramatically, I said. I don't know any other way to leave, he said, and I almost liked him for the line. He glanced at Nina, a look that was not a promise and not a plea, just witness. I hope you both choose something you can carry. At the next stop, he stepped onto the platform and disappeared into the machinery of people who believe trains erase consequences. We watched him until he became a shape and then a memory. We didn't talk for a while. We let the ocean narrate. When Nina leaned into me, it wasn't forgiveness. It was heat, alive, risky hours. I kissed her temple and tasted salt that might have been sea or might have been us. She turned her face and kissed me back, slow, not to win, not to pledge, but to confirm the room was still here. Her hand slid to my thigh, a question I knew how to answer. I answered by breathing her name the way you say a password softly so the door honors it. The train pulled into the coastal town where the streets smell like lemons having an opinion. We wandered without the pretense of a plan. At the overlook, kids were doing that dangerous dance with railings that reminds you joy often mistakes itself for immortality. We found a bench and sat too close. She put my hand on her knee under the dress where the skin is secret and electric. It wasn't explicit, it was precise. It said, I'm still made of this. So are you. A gull wheeled like punctuation. Somewhere, a wedding party cheered for the wrong reasons. What happens now? She asked, the ribbon flashing when the wind tried to edit us. We make a room, I said. We decide where the windows go. We let air in. And if I miss the view of a stranger, she said. Tell me when you miss it, I said. We'll take a train and sit in 7A7B and call it what it is. We won't pretend it's laundry. She smiled without tragedy. She leaned in and kissed me in a way that made me remember the stairwell, the hot laughter, the zipper between my teeth, the ridiculous perfection of young decision. It wasn't a performance. It was a rehearsal, which is the kinder word for practice. On the ride back, we sat in the observation car and let the glass make us honest. We talked rules like two smart people who know rules are only as good as the desire that respects them. We agreed on truth before improvisation. We agreed on no strangers in the house we're not both building. We agreed to make space for the feral and the soft without forcing either to apologize. We touched like heat with manners. At the station, as the city swallowed us again, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Thank you for letting me be extra. I deleted it without malice. On the walk home, Nina picked up a lemon someone had dropped and rolled it in her palm like a stress ball. She tossed it lightly. I caught it. It felt like a ritual we hadn't invented yet. At home, she set the calendar entry to completed and renamed it Window. We stood in the hallway, the ficus pretending to be a tree, the light making good on itself. She took my face in her hands like a frame. I rested my thumbs along her jaw the way I do when I want to keep the moment from moving too fast. We'll fail at this sometimes, she said. We'll practice, I said. And if I say a name in my sleep again, she asked, half wincing, half brave. Wake me, I said. Say mine after. We kissed in the doorway like people who decided to stay and knew that staying is not the absence of leaving, it's the presence of choosing. In bed, her hand found mine under the sheet, a small declaration. When the room went dark, the sea didn't leave. It adjusted, becoming the sound in our chest you notice only when you're quiet enough to deserve it. Somewhere in that dark, the ribbon fell from her hair and landed on my wrist like a claim. I wore it until morning, and when I loosened it, I tied it around the ficus. It looked foolish and alive. So did we.